obviously
Oh, not so fast,
surprised.
my
Yeah.
friend.
uh, I mean, just amazing what San Jose State has done. But we'll get to that in a second. I think as far as the conference goes, I don't know who they add right now because everyone's kind of taken up, right? The Mountain West is really, I might get hate for saying this, but kind of the leftovers of the Pac-12, right? The Pac-12 has all of, the best teams over on this side. I don't necessarily seeing a team like Colorado even being willing. I mean, they'd have to be forced out of their contract, out of the Pac-12, um, or removed. And obviously BYU with their success, I don't see that happening. I mean, I guess if they wanted to dive down into like maybe a UTSA or UTEP or somebody like that, but I don't know if that necessarily how much better that makes your team. And I actually don't even know what conference they're a part of right off the top of my head. So
Right.
if they'd be even willing to jump ship to do that, they could try and re-add New Mexico State. Obviously, they're I almost said a free agent. They're not. They're an independent school. Again, I don't know if that necessarily makes you better. They did have a good run a couple years ago, but went right back to being terrible. Um, so
I think that like since there really is no immediate option, no really there really is no obvious choice as to who you would add to fill that spot. I think maybe we should just do a little bit more deeper dive into like who kind of fits into that kind of, I don't know, the rankings of the teams or whatnot, the kind of because yeah, it's a lot of the struggles that the Mountain West has is that like regionally there's not a lot of teams in that area to add, and so you're talking about like somebody like BYU who, yeah, it would be great to bring them back to the Mountain West. They used to be in the Mountain West early on, but there's just so much more money out of the Mountain West, and being an independent in their case where you can schedule your own TV contracts and stuff like that, that I just don't see anybody jumping to the Mountain West unless it was a jump up.
yeah, yep. And I mean, there's some potential there, but I don't know. And so I guess on the reverse side, if they were to go smaller and Boise State leaves, who do they kick out?
Right. I don't. I see. That's another one. I don't know if there's really an obvious choice there. I think the one choice that it might have to be, which would kind of be a shame because they've been a better team in years past, is Hawaii. They're already not in the conference basketball wise. I don't know other sports if they're in the conference or not. I'd have to look into that. But I think that's probably your obvious choice logistically. Also being a team that's not in the what is it called? The 50, the 48, the regional. What is it called?
Like, is it the Continental or
Is it Great 48 or something? I don't know.
the landlocked 48?
Yeah, exactly. But so like logistically, that brings so much more of a problem to some teams traveling wise and stuff like that. So I think that would probably be my guess. But at the same time, like I said, they've been better. So I don't know where you'd want to kick them out.
Yeah, that would actually be really sad because they've done really really well and have been improving and have a ton of history there. I didn't follow them super closely, but I'm sure they had a ton of problems even with trying to follow like COVID protocols and stuff of like traveling. I mean, they literally have to do a ton of traveling, and so I don't know. That would be a bummer to see them go. Or even like a team like UNLV or New Mexico. I don't really see ties breaking that way. But I mean, if you had a 9-game slate, it would make, I guess, more sense. But it would be, I think, heartbreaking for one team, no matter what. So
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Like I said, we should take a deeper dive into that sometime and give you guys maybe a better answer on that. I think that'd be a really fun segment to get into sometime. But we're a little bit pressed for time on our news and notes, trying not to turn this into a podcast in itself. So we're going to leave it there for today and take a quick break, and we'll be back to dive into some NBA action with the season starting up just a few days ago, and teams already kind of showing what they might be capable of this season. We're going to give you guys some of our analysis analysis and some of our predictions for what might happen this season. So stay tuned for that. We'll be back in a second. What's up, everyone? We are back from a quick break, and we're here to talk about the NBA, and more specifically, some of the teams that we think are going to have either an improved season based on what they've done, maybe a tougher go of things based on what did or did not happen for them, and just some kind of general prediction. So let's just start it off right at the top. We each have 5 teams that we've picked to give a little bit more of in-depth conversation about to the best of our abilities for only having played 1 or 2 games so far. But Boxy, will you start us off with your hometown favorites?
Yeah, so no surprise. I've talked about them before, the Utah Jazz. I was really, really happy with their offseason. Some fans were not, and I just want to say, are you dumb? Because they had a phenomenal offseason.
It should be said, coming from somebody who's not a Jazz fan, I was very, very surprised to see that they were able to get basically all the business they needed to get done. Re-signing Jordan Clark. I don't want to give away too much. Re-signing Jordan Clarkson, signing both Rudy and Donovan to long-term contracts, and then also bringing back Derek Favors. I was almost like shocked that they were able to do all of that in one window. So go talk more about that, please.
No, I think, and a lot of people that I see and follow on Twitter were talking. I think Derek Favors' presence was definitely missed last year, so I am absolutely happy to see him return. They moved like 7 guys off the roster, which was crazy. I know Ed Davis was one of them, Tony Bradley. There was a whole bunch of names that we won't get into, but we're able to stay under the cap, make these awesome contracts happen, put themselves in a really good position. Obviously, as Conley, his contract will be up next year. Hopefully they're not like doubling down and want to give him the same contract. Hopefully they'll, give him more of an appropriate contract, but maybe even being able to add another big piece to that. I think going through a season will be good to adequately identify. I do think that they still need another consistent shooter, which this season will tell. But even then, Jordan Clarkson has been a huge. 6 man of the year talks are already happening 2 games in. But I'm really, really happy. They definitely got better. They did everything that they needed to do. Hopefully they stay better, obviously, with the return of Bogdanovic. He's been playing, or has been at least training really healthy. They said that surgery on his thumb, I believe, has been healing just the way that they want it to. I'm just happy. I'm really, really hopeful that Utah can finally get out of that like mid-range spot and actually get a good seeding and perform well. Especially, there are other teams that got really, really that made really good moves as well. So it's not going to be an easy time for them.
I don't want to spend too much time on each team, but the one of the big questions surrounding the Jazz, and this is something that Donovan Mitchell has talked about a little bit, is they blew a 3-1 lead in the playoffs. They have had a hard time progressing past the first round. Do you think that they made the additions, or what they've done through the offseason? Do you think they've done a better job at getting to that point?
Yes, and I will say, because of that, I know that they have struggled when Rudy is off, when Rudy is not on the floor. So I think the addition of bringing Favors back, as well as picking up, please forgive me, I even tried to look up the pronunciation. It's Azubuike, I think is how you say his name. Azubuike. There we go. I think a lot of people question that, but I actually think that might have been a great move for the Jazz. I personally was frustrated with it, but now to see what they've done, it makes sense. Obviously, they have new owners too, which is going to change how things flow a little bit. But I think if they can get more of that consistency out of a center, if Rudy is off, that they can still have the strong defense and then be able to put something together offensively. Hopefully it doesn't come down to them blowing another, huge lead over a team. So
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and talk about, I thought it was only fitting, my favorite team since you picked your favorite team to start us off. And that'll be the Golden State Warriors. It's a I chose them for a couple reasons. One, not just because they're my favorite team, but I think there's a lot of things that are really interesting about them because they had obviously a really poor season last season. They essentially tanked to try to get the best pick they could in the draft. Ended up finishing with the worst record in the league, I believe, but ended up getting the second pick and ended up picking James Wiseman, who is one of the players I'm going to talk about first. He is somebody that I was kind of in a similar boat. I was like, I like James Wiseman a lot. I wasn't mad that they drafted him, but I thought maybe somebody else would be a little bit more intriguing and could maybe contribute a little bit more to what they traditionally do on offense and just as a team in general. But through the first 2 games of the season, he already looks really, really good. He's got averaging 18.5 points and 7 rebounds a game, and looks really efficient. He's even made a couple threes, which is really good to see from the center position, and something that he's, has the ability to do, but wasn't necessarily in the scouting report of this guy's going to be able to light it up from three. And so I think having that center presence, somebody that they've really missed kind of since Andrew Bogut, and JaVale McGee was a good off the bench option, but they've never really had a starting center who was able to contribute on both sides of the ball, but specifically on offense. And I think if they can get Wiseman to play up to the level he's played through 2 games or anywhere close throughout the season, and obviously moving forward in the future, I think that's a great addition, and I'm really excited about that. However, I will say it's not all positive for the Warriors. Obviously, Clay in the offseason, missing this season with his offseason Achilles injury. He's going to be missing now 2 seasons in a row, which is really, really hard to stomach. He's not only a great player, but a great guy and one of my favorite players on the Warriors. So that kind of is a downer. But now, just as we start recording, Marquise Chris, who's one of the players I was going to mention as one of the great role players on the Warriors, he will also be missing the season with a leg break. So, it doesn't necessarily change what I was going to say about the Warriors, but it adds another point of having to build from the players that you have on a roster that's so heavily weighted with big contracts, and being able to sign the right players to fill in on those depth roles and, fourth, fifth, sixth guys. And I was going to touch on how I think they've done a really good job adding players like Marquise Chris, somebody like Damian Lee, who they signed on a 2-way and has kind of grown into that role a little bit more as a backup guard, as somebody who can play like the 2. They have good pieces. However, now when you lose Marquise Chris, you also have Clay out. What I don't want to see with the Warriors is too much of the burden falling on Steph's shoulders, because although Steph is really, really good, he struggles at times, and I think the playoffs are an indication of that, of having way too much weight on his shoulders. He's a really good creative player and a player who flows within the structure and the flow of the offense, and so to have him basically just kind of be the Trae Young of the offense, go down and try to make something happen every single time, I don't think it's necessarily his game. I don't think it's necessarily what's best for the Warriors. So, all that being surmised to say, I think that the Warriors will still struggle to be a good team this season. Coming into the season with Clay, I thought they're going to be right back to where they were. And I saw other people talking about that as well. I saw other people saying that they were probably going to be contributing, or I should be saying vying for maybe a 4th, 5th, maybe even top half of the Western Conference finish. Now it looks like with what they've had going on, with the injuries they've had, they're probably going to be better than they were last season, but still not a playoff team, which is frustrating, but also I think could be a positive if you bring back a healthy Clay, a healthy Marquise, and maybe giving Steph another year to kind of either grow into more of a leadership and being the guy role, or just maybe even it might be best for them to do a tank 2.0 and try to just give the players who are, aging a little bit more, giving them a little bit more rest throughout the season, and just see how it goes when you run it back in 2021.
Yeah, and like you're saying, at the positive side, they do get the chance to develop some